On my retirement day, my daughter said I was losing my mind. She took my money and left me in a care home. A week later, I came back with a flash drive. She smiled until the lawyers pressed play. Then everything fell apart. People assume betrayal comes in the form of strangers or enemies. But the truth is, when it wears your last name, it cuts deeper than you ever imagined. Before I begin, let me say this. I wasn't always this woman. The one hiding out in a quiet town, whispering truths into the walls of a rented cottage. I used to be someone else, Evelyn Carter, 66 years old, a school librarian for over 4 decades in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I wore cardigans and comfortable shoes, knew every kid's reading level by heart, and believed my life had been small, but full. I thought after retirement I'd finally rest. That morning, my last day at work. The air was cool and dry, the New Mexico sun rising like an old friend. I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my soft blue blouse, tucking a stray silver hair behind my ear. My daughter, Natalie, had texted the night before. "Can't wait to celebrate tomorrow, Mom. Just the 2 of us. You deserve it." My heart warmed at her words. Natalie, my pride and joy. She had made something of herself, a real estate broker, smart, ambitious, the kind of woman people listened to when she walked into a room. The retirement ceremony was supposed to be at noon. The school had planned a small event in the library. Balloons, cake, a few speeches. I even wore the pearl earrings my husband had given me on our 20th anniversary. He's been gone 8 years now, heart failure. Quiet fast. Just like him. But Natalie didn't show. Not at the school, not at my apartment. Instead, she called around 1:30. Her voice was rushed, too cheerful. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Something came up with a closing. But listen, I made a dinner reservation just for us. I'll pick you up. It'll be special, I promise." And like the fool I was, I believed her. She picked me up in her shiny SUV. She looked beautiful. Hair tied back, tailored blazer, those heels she always wore like armor. I noticed she barely looked at me as I got in. Her smile was off. Tight. We drove in silence for a while. Then she started chatting about some luxury property she was about to land. I nodded along, trying not to feel the disappointment pressing in my chest. It was fine, I told myself. Dinner would be nice. Maybe she even had a surprise planned. But we didn't go toward the restaurant district. We kept heading west, toward the foothills. I stared out the window as the streets grew quieter, less familiar. "Natalie, where are we going?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "It's a wellness place, Mom. Just trust me, okay? We'll talk inside." A cold knot formed in my gut. My fingers curled around the strap of my purse. The car pulled into a long driveway lined with flowering trees. A polished sign read Golden Creek Wellness Residence. I turned to her. "What is this?" Her smile had vanished. "It's for your safety. For both of us." "What are you talking about?" She parked and opened the trunk. I didn't get out. I couldn't. My body wouldn't move. That's when I saw it, my suitcase. Packed. My overnight bag. My coat. Even the Afghan from my couch. "You packed my things?" Natalie came around to the passenger side, kneeling beside the open door. "Please don't make this harder. You've been slipping, Mom. Forgetting things. Getting confused. I talked to a specialist. You need supervision." "I haven't forgotten a damn thing." My voice cracked. "You lied to me." She stood. Cold. Controlled. "Let's go inside." I don't remember walking in. I just remember the bright lights, the gentle music playing overhead, and the receptionist handing her a clipboard like they'd done this before. They had. My name was already in the system. A room prepared. Papers signed. Guardianship documents. Medical reports I had never seen. All claiming that I, Evelyn Carter, librarian, crossword puzzle queen, book club leader, was in the early stages of dementia. The staff called me sweetheart. They smiled gently. I was led to a room with beige walls, a recliner by the window, and a welcome folder on the dresser. Natalie placed the suitcase by the bed and gave me a long look. "I'm sorry," she said, "but this is for the best." She left before I could respond. I sat on the bed, my coat still on, heart hammering in my chest. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to vanish and the hallway lights to cast long shadows across the floor. I didn't cry that night. I should have. Maybe that would have helped. But instead, I just stared at the ceiling, the white tiles swimming in silence. In the dark, I counted every betrayal. Every time Natalie had brushed off my phone calls. Every moment she made me question myself. The gaslighting had been slow. Tiny remarks about me repeating stories, misplacing things I was sure I hadn't. I thought it was just aging. I thought I was being paranoid. But it was never me. It was her. The next few days passed in a blur. The staff weren't cruel, but their kindness stung. They treated me like someone broken. One nurse even offered to help me brush my hair. "It's okay, Han," she said softly. "We all need a little help sometimes." I wanted to scream. Instead, I played along. Ate the meals. Attended one activity. Baked goods and bingo. I smiled when spoken to. Nodded politely. But inside, I was cataloging everything. Observing. Planning. And then I met Leah. She was younger than the other staff, early 30s maybe. She had thick glasses, a ponytail, and an energy that didn't match the facility's numb routine. One afternoon, I was sitting in the common area, solving a legal crossword puzzle. Not a simple one, this was tough. Leah walked past, then paused. "You're doing that in pen?" I looked up. "Is there another way?" She grinned. "That's bold." We started talking. Not much at first. Weather. Books. She noticed the novel on my lap, an old legal thriller. "You like that kind of stuff?" she asked. I used to tutor students in research. Helped one young man pass the LSAT. I tried to keep it casual, but Leah's eyes narrowed. She saw it. The clarity. The sharpness. And she didn't treat me like I was fading. Over the next few days, she visited me more often. We talked about literature, news, even ethics in medicine. She never used that baby voice. Never once called me sweetheart. Then one day, she walked into the lounge with something in her hand. "Found this cleaning out the admin office," she whispered. "Bottom drawer of a locked desk. No label. Belonged to a resident who passed away last year. No family came forward. It was a small black flash drive. Thought you might know how to use it." That night, long after lights out, I plugged it into one of the old desktops in the rec room. My fingers trembled slightly. I wasn't expecting much. But what I found wasn't some forgotten family album. No, it was something much more dangerous. And it had my daughter's name all over it. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The files on the flash drive were organized in folders with strange names, client_7B, shelltxn_Q4, and one simply called N.Carter Assets. That one stopped me cold. I opened it, and there it was, documents with my name, my social security number, bank accounts I'd never opened, wire transfers, signatures that looked like mine but didn't feel like mine. My heart pounded. My fingers hovered above the mouse, as if touching anything would set off an alarm. I scrolled further, PDFs of property deeds, names of limited liability companies, and spreadsheets with huge sums of money moving from one company to another. 6 figures. 7 figures. I remember whispering, "What is this, Natalie?" Because it had to be her. There was a folder titled Crescent West Holdings, the name of the boutique real estate group she had joined last year. I'd only heard it in passing, but now it was all over this drive. She wasn't just working there. She was using it. And using me. Over the next few nights, I studied everything. I took notes on a legal pad I kept hidden in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. I memorized company names, cross-referenced dates. There were voice recordings, too grainy but clear enough. One stood out. A man's voice. "So the name's Evelyn Carter?" Natalie's voice replied, casual as ever. "Yeah, my mom. She's not working anymore, so she won't notice a thing." I stopped breathing. She said it like I was furniture. Like I was some unused object sitting in a dusty room. I knew then, this wasn't just about betrayal. This was criminal. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. She had the legal upper hand. She had my bank accounts, my guardianship, and more importantly, she had the law behind her lies. I needed someone who could help me without putting me back into her hands. That's when I remembered Leah. Her kindness hadn't been performative. She asked real questions. Paid attention. She listened. One morning, I waited for her to finish her rounds and gently tugged her arm. "I need to show you something. But not here." We met in the laundry room. I brought the flash drive and my notes. Her eyes scanned the files. I didn't have to explain much. She caught on fast. "This is serious," she whispered. "Like jail time serious." I nodded. "And I'm afraid if I stay here much longer, I won't be able to prove any of it." She hesitated for a long moment, then said, "I think I know someone. My friend Marcus. He's a lawyer. Civil rights and elder law stuff. He volunteers with seniors sometimes. Can I trust him?" She met my eyes. If I didn't, I wouldn't even bring him up. So we planned it carefully. Marcus came during visitor hours 2 days later. He posed as a nephew from out of town. I'd never seen someone more composed. Tall, mid-30s, sharp suit but kind eyes. He greeted the staff, joked with the receptionist, and then slipped quietly into my room. We talked for nearly an hour. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, nodding, occasionally jotting notes on a small pad. When I showed him the flash drive, he put on gloves before inserting it into his tablet. Professional. Smart. When I was done, he said one sentence that changed everything. "We need to get you out of here." I stared at him. "How?" "Legally," he said. Quietly. "If Natalie believes you're still under her thumb, she'll keep making mistakes. That's what we want." I almost laughed. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said. "But it's possible." And that was enough for me. Over the next week, we worked in secret. Marcus filed papers to suspend Natalie's guardianship temporarily, citing medical misconduct and lack of due process. He submitted evidence of my mental clarity, including logs Leah helped compile of my daily activities, books I read, puzzles I solved, journal entries, even video clips Leah had discreetly recorded with my consent. Me reading aloud, solving math problems, speaking lucidly about my finances. The judge didn't make a final ruling but agreed to a temporary review, allowing Marcus to move me out of Golden Creek until a full competency evaluation could be completed. It was risky, but it gave us a window. 2 days later, under the pretense of a medical transport, I was wheeled out of the building in a hoodie and sunglasses, pretending to be drowsy from medication. The nurse helping didn't even blink. Marcus had prepared the paperwork. I remember looking back only once. Golden Creek stood still in the morning haze, quiet and clinical. It was the last time I saw it with fear in my heart. We drove straight to Asheville, North Carolina, where Marcus had arranged for a furnished rental cottage through a private client. The house was small but warm, nestled between tall trees with a back porch that overlooked nothing but quiet. No neighbors close enough to watch. No cameras. No Natalie. The first night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because I felt free. It was the first time in weeks that no one asked me if I needed help tying my shoes or reminded me what day it was. I made tea in the little kitchen, stared at the stars through the window, and let the silence hug me like an old friend. The next few weeks were work. Marcus and I spent hours combing through the flash drive. He brought in a forensic accountant who helped us map the flow of funds. We traced over $3.2 million in transfers across at least 6 shell companies, all tied back to Natalie's firm. Some accounts were in my name, others in my late husband's. Several had forged signatures. It was a spiderweb, and Natalie had spun it using my life as the bait. Meanwhile, Marcus coached me on how to prepare for the court review. There would be another hearing. Natalie had already responded to the temporary suspension with fury. She filed a new petition claiming I'd been kidnapped and was being manipulated by outsiders. She attached a letter from a psychiatrist I'd never met claiming signs of early-stage paranoia. Marcus didn't flinch. "This is her trying to scare you. We're going to expose her with her own paper trail." But the pressure started to build. Natalie launched a media campaign, going to local news channels in Albuquerque. She cried on camera, saying I'd vanished, that she feared I was being taken advantage of by people who want her money. Viewers ate it up. The poor daughter with a confused mother angle played well. It was disgusting. Worse, comments online began appearing under the news clips. "Why would a mom leave her only daughter? Sounds like elder abuse from someone else." I stayed off the internet after that. But I didn't stop writing. I kept a journal. Detailed entries. My thoughts, memories, facts. I wasn't doing it for comfort. I was building a record. A testament. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about escaping her. It was about proving I had never been lost to begin with. And proving that the person pretending to be the victim was the predator all along. It's a strange thing, watching your child become your enemy. I didn't see it happen all at once. It was slow, like a room darkening minute by minute, until suddenly, you realize you're standing in pitch black. In those early days at the cottage, I kept trying to piece together when Natalie had started turning into someone I didn't recognize. Was it after her father passed? After she left teaching to chase commissions and luxury condos? Or was she always this way, and I just refused to see it? Marcus kept reminding me to stay focused. "The truth will speak," he'd say, tapping the ever-growing file we kept on the kitchen table. And it was growing. Fast. Every day we added more. Emails between Natalie and fake buyers, signed forms with my name from banks I'd never heard of, forged tax filings with returns rerouted to P.O. boxes in cities I'd never visited. The more we uncovered, the more real it all became. This wasn't some small misstep. Natalie had built an entire empire on my identity. And she had done it with the calm, calculated precision of someone who thought she'd never be caught. Leah stayed in touch, quietly, through a secure email Marcus had set up. She sent updates from Golden Creek. Things like, they haven't asked questions yet, or Natalie hasn't come back to the facility. But one message hit harder than the rest: they've replaced you already. Another woman moved into your room. Looks confused all the time. No one's explained anything to her. That was the moment it hit me. I'd been a file, a bed to fill, a number on a chart. I could have disappeared and they would have kept rolling. One afternoon, while Marcus was making calls, I sat by the window and pulled out one of the older USB drives we hadn't fully reviewed. I clicked through the folders. There was one labeled Recordings Coaching. Inside were dozens of audio clips, mostly scratchy, as if recorded through a phone left on a desk. I clicked one. Natalie's voice again. No, don't write it like that. You have to match her signature. Loop the Y like this, see? Then a man. You sure she won't notice? She doesn't read her own mail. Just copy it. We'll say it's a bonus investment account. My mom's easy. Easy. That word stabbed deeper than anything. She had studied my handwriting. Used it. Used me. And she was coaching others how to do it, too. These weren't one-off mistakes. They were rehearsed. Practiced. Cruel. When Marcus returned, I played him the clip. He listened with his jaw clenched. This is what we needed, he said. This is proof of intent. We added it to the file. The next few days were tense. The court hearing was approaching. Natalie had submitted more documents claiming I was unstable, paranoid, and being held against my will. Her lawyer pushed for a full financial freeze and requested that the court block the trust Marcus had helped me set up. It was clear they wanted to strip everything away. Again. But Marcus had planned for this. He'd already arranged an independent psychiatric evaluation with a licensed professional who came to the house, spent 3 hours with me, asked me to recount my life, current events, even solve logic problems. I passed easily. At the end, she smiled and said, I'll see you in court. Don't worry, you're more sound than half the people running the state. Still, the nerves built. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake, thinking about Natalie as a little girl. I used to braid her hair before school, leave notes in her lunchbox, wait in the car during ballet practice with a thermos of hot cocoa. I remembered staying up all night sewing her graduation dress, when the one she ordered online arrived 2 sizes too small. How had we gone from that to this? Part of me wanted to believe something changed her. Debt. Pressure. Influence from someone else. But deep down I knew better. This wasn't about desperation. It was about control. And greed. And maybe a kind of resentment I'd never seen before. I had lived a modest life, taught in public schools, read books instead of chasing status. Maybe that embarrassed her. Maybe I embarrassed her. The day of the hearing arrived gray and cold. Marcus drove us to the courthouse just outside Asheville. I wore a simple coat, sensible shoes, and carried no makeup, no jewelry. I wanted to look like what I was, clear-headed, calm, and ready to fight. We sat in the courtroom waiting. Natalie entered about 20 minutes later, dressed in a designer suit, her lawyer at her side. She didn't look at me. Not once. Just adjusted her papers, whispered to her attorney, and flashed a polite, tearful smile when the media snapped photos through the window. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes, called the session to order. Case number 10873B. Petition for permanent guardianship of Evelyn Carter. Natalie's attorney began with practiced concern. Your Honor, my client only wishes to protect her mother, who has been missing for several weeks and is believed to be under the influence of individuals who may be manipulating her finances. There is clear evidence of paranoia, as well as signs of deteriorating cognitive ability. Marcus rose calmly. Respectfully, Your Honor, none of that is true, and we're prepared to prove it. We presented the evaluation first. The psychiatrist took the stand, read her notes, and stated clearly, Evelyn Carter is mentally competent, fully aware of her financial decisions. There are no signs of dementia or psychological instability. Then came the bombshell. Marcus walked to the bench and handed over a thick file. What you're about to see, Your Honor, is a trail of fraud. Identity theft. Forged signatures. Laundered funds. All tied back to Ms. Natalie Carter and her company. We have documented over $3.2 million in illegal activity, some of which occurred while Ms. Carter held guardianship power over her mother. The courtroom went still. Natalie's lawyer scrambled. Objected. Claimed manipulation. Claimed the files were fake. Then Marcus pulled out the flash drive. We also have recordings of Ms. Carter instructing others on how to forge her mother's signature. That's when Natalie finally looked at me. Not with sadness. Not with guilt. With fear. She knew it was over. The judge didn't rule immediately. She recessed for review. Said she needed time to go over the files, the recordings, the psychiatric report. We left the courtroom that day uncertain, exhausted, but something in my chest finally loosened. Not victory. Not yet. But the knowledge that the truth was no longer buried. That night, back at the cottage, I stood on the porch and stared into the trees. Somewhere in that quiet was the version of me who'd been silenced. Erased. I whispered into the dark, "I'm still here." And I meant it. I spent the next few days waiting. Not just for the judge's ruling, but for something I couldn't name. Maybe closure. Maybe the peace that people like to say comes after telling the truth. But the truth is, there's no peace when you're unraveling a lifetime of lies. It just leaves a quiet space and you don't know what to do with it. The media picked up the story almost immediately after the hearing. Natalie had made herself too public with her earlier missing mother interviews. And now those same reporters were sniffing around, asking questions, connecting dots. Of course, my name wasn't in the headlines, not yet. Marcus had worked hard to keep my identity private for as long as possible. But the story was out there. Real estate executive under investigation for financial exploitation of elderly relative. I read it online. My hands trembled. I wasn't used to seeing my life in black and white headlines. Leah called that night. "I saw it," she said. "We all did. People at Golden Creek were whispering about it all day. Some of them finally asked what happened to you. I didn't say much. Just that the truth would come out. I thanked her. I always thanked her. Without Leah, I might still be sitting in that beige room with the window facing a brick wall. I might still be doubting myself." 2 days later, Marcus received the judge's official ruling. I was declared fully competent. The guardianship was dissolved. My financial control was restored. Natalie's access to any of my accounts was blocked immediately, and her actions were referred to federal authorities for investigation. When Marcus told me, I didn't cry. I thought I might. Instead, I just exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath for months and didn't realize it. But we both knew this wasn't over. "This will get worse before it gets better," he warned. "She's backed into a corner now. And people like Natalie? They don't go quietly." He was right. Within 24 hours, I received a letter at the cottage. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was hers. Sharp, slanted. Always looked rushed. Inside was a photo of us from years ago, my 60th birthday. I was laughing, frosting on my chin, and Natalie was beside me, knife in hand, grinning like we were the best team in the world. On the back she had written, "You always believed in me. I'm sorry that wasn't enough." That was all. No apology. No ownership. Just a line designed to stir guilt. I stared at the photo for a long time. Remembered that day. How I'd baked my own cake, because she said she was too busy. How I'd worn a yellow sweater because she told me once it made me look less tired. How I'd smiled even though I knew, deep down, that she hadn't really been present. That night, I burned the picture in the fireplace. Not out of anger. Not even to erase the memory. But because I didn't want her to have that kind of power over me anymore. That quiet emotional pull she always counted on. That doubt. That guilt. I was done carrying that for her. The following week, the Department of Justice officially opened a case. Marcus got the call early in the morning. He came straight to the cottage, a rare smile on his face. "They've seen enough. The paper trail, the recordings, the false tax filings. They're moving forward. She's being investigated for wire fraud, identity theft, and elder exploitation." I sat down slowly, letting the words sink in. "She could go to prison," I said quietly. He nodded. "If convicted, 15 years. Maybe more." I didn't feel joy. Just a strange, hollow sort of justice. Like someone putting a stolen item back in your hands after so long, and it doesn't quite feel like yours anymore. A few days later, Marcus handed me a large envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Your new trust documents. I had them finalized this morning. Everything is locked down. You're safe." I opened it. My name was at the top, Evelyn Carter Trust, managed under strict legal protections. Natalie couldn't touch a single cent, even if she tried to sue or manipulate her way back in. I flipped through the pages, then paused. "This clause, this means I can designate where my assets go after I'm gone?" "Exactly," he said. "You can leave it to anyone. Or anything." I thought about it for a long time. That night, I stayed up late at the kitchen table. The file folder was open beside me, and a blank sheet of paper in front of me. And then I began to write. Not a will. A mission. By sunrise, I had named a non-profit initiative. The Silver Voice Project, an organization to help elderly victims of financial abuse. Not just with legal aid, but with protection, education, and dignity. Because I knew I wasn't alone. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of people like me, hidden behind smiling photos and whispered family secrets. They needed someone to speak. To say, you are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not alone. Marcus helped me register the foundation. I used a portion of my recovered assets, roughly $400,000, to start. We hired an advocacy team, partnered with 2 attorneys in neighboring states, opened a hotline, quietly, carefully, and people started calling. Stories poured in, mothers whose children emptied their retirement accounts, grandfathers forced into homes under false claims, widows pressured into signing documents they couldn't read. Every voice reminded me that what happened to me wasn't rare. It was just hidden. Meanwhile, Natalie stayed quiet in public. Her lawyer issued a statement saying she was cooperating fully with authorities and devastated by the misunderstanding with her mother. Misunderstanding. That word again. It's the kind of word abusers use to clean up their messes. But behind the scenes, she was scrambling. Her firm dropped her. Clients backed out. Her bank accounts were frozen. And then one day, Marcus got the call. They've filed official charges. I sat down. My knees went weak. She's been indicted? He nodded. She'll be arraigned next week. And just like that, it was real. My daughter. The person who once made me a handmade card with macaroni and glitter, who used to sneak into my bed after nightmares, who I thought would hold my hand when I was old, was now a defendant in a federal case. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was tired. The morning of Natalie's arraignment, the news broke before sunrise. Her mugshot wasn't plastered across every screen, but it made the rounds, local stations, regional papers, a few online news sites. The headline was short and sharp. Real estate broker indicted for fraud, elder exploitation. They didn't use my name, which was a small grace, but anyone who knew us could put the pieces together. I watched the segment in silence, sitting on the edge of the couch with a cup of tea I never drank. The reporter used phrases like systematic manipulation, millions in misappropriated funds, and alleged abuse of legal guardianship. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. I'd spent all my shaking in that facility, in that courtroom, in the nights wondering how deeply I'd been fooled. Later that afternoon, Marcus came by the cottage. He looked tired, not worn out but focused. He'd been fielding calls all day from other attorneys, the media, even people from the state looking into related cases. Natalie had been granted bail. High, but not impossible for someone who used to play in big money. She paid it, of course, using the last available account that hadn't been flagged. But she wouldn't get far. The DOJ had frozen most of her assets. Her passport had been pulled. She wasn't going anywhere. She's going to try to contact you again, Marcus said, sipping coffee across the table. Just be ready. I nodded. She already has. Slipped a letter under my door. He looked up quickly. When? Last week. What did it say? I told him. His jaw tightened. We can get a restraining order. I shook my head. Not yet. I want to see what she does when she realizes she's lost the one thing she can't fake, my silence. And I meant it. I wasn't afraid of Natalie anymore. She could posture, she could plead, she could even cry if the cameras rolled. But I wasn't stepping back into her version of the story. I had written my own now, and I intended to finish it. In the days that followed, the Silver Voice project gained traction. More calls came in. Our website had over 10,000 hits in the first week after the story aired. I started getting letters, real letters, handwritten, mailed to the foundation's post office box. Older women mostly. Some men. People telling me I'd made them feel seen for the first time in years. There was one letter I kept near my nightstand. It came from a woman named Rita in Boise. She wrote, "My son took my car, my pension, and my home, and no one believed me. They said I was confused. But I saw you on TV, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible." Invisible. That word haunted me. Because that's what Natalie tried to make me. Not just legally, but emotionally. She had made me question my own memories, my own instincts. I used to lie awake at Golden Creek wondering if maybe I really was forgetting things, or misremembering conversations. But I wasn't. I never was. And the more I spoke up, the more I realized how common that tactic was: gaslight, isolate, control. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a strategy. Leah called again. She said the staff at Golden Creek had read about the Silver Voice project and wanted to bring in our materials for training. Apparently, the board had fired 2 of the administrators and replaced the director. I smiled at the news. Not because I wanted revenge on that facility, I didn't, but because it meant no other Evelyn would sit in that beige room again wondering if her voice still mattered. Then one morning, a letter came I wasn't expecting. It wasn't from Natalie. It was from her lawyer. It was short, cold, legal. Natalie was contesting the will. Not the current trust, she couldn't touch that. But she'd submitted a document she claimed was signed 2 years ago, leaving her full control over my estate, my home, even personal effects. She'd attached the document to a civil claim asking the court to honor it in place of the revised trust. I handed the letter to Marcus. "She's still trying," I said. He nodded grimly. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on. We can prove it's a forgery. The signature's wrong, the witnesses listed never existed, and we have documentation of your mental clarity from every month since then. But she's trying to make noise," I said. "Trying to create doubt." "Yes," he replied. "And that's the dangerous part. She doesn't have to win. She just has to muddy the water enough to scare you." I laughed bitterly. "I've been scared, Marcus. But I'm not anymore." And I wasn't. That week, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I gave a speech. The local university's social work department had heard about the Silver Voice project and invited me to speak at a symposium on elder protection. It was a small event, maybe 100 people, but I stood on that stage, hands steady, voice clear, and told my story. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I just told the truth. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 22. She had tears in her eyes. "My grandmother went through something similar," she whispered. "But she didn't make it out." I hugged her. That night, I sat on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the moon cast silver light over the hills. I thought about the girl Natalie used to be. The one who wrote me poems in 3rd grade. The one who insisted on helping me carry library books into the trunk of the car every Friday. I wondered when that version of her had gone. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't picture that child without seeing the woman she became. And that was the part that hurt the most. You can't undo love, you know. You can bury it. You can protect yourself from it. But once it's been given, it leaves a mark. And I had loved Natalie with every ounce of who I was. Even now, I wasn't sure if I hated her. But I was sure I was finished letting that love silence me. There's something that shifts inside you when you finally stop waiting for someone to become who you hoped they were. I'd spent years, decades, clinging to the idea of Natalie, the daughter I raised, the woman I thought would one day come around and say, "Mom, I'm sorry." But that version of her didn't exist. And the one I was facing now, the woman trying to claw her way back into my estate, who forged my signature and smiled for the news cameras, she was real. And I was finally ready to face her with clear eyes. Marcus was already drafting a formal response to the contested will claim. "We'll file a motion to dismiss before it goes anywhere," he told me. "She has no basis, and the court's already seen the trust documents. But she's testing your limits." "She's always done that," I said quietly. "Only difference now is I'm not giving in." And I wasn't. Around the same time, we were approached by a larger national advocacy group, the Elder Justice Network. They'd read about the Silver Voice project and wanted to partner with us. Help expand our outreach, bring our materials into senior centers across the country. Marcus was excited. He started talking about building a legal support arm, maybe even pushing for legislation that would require stricter checks before granting guardianship. And me, I was just trying to breathe in the freedom. It still felt new, like my skin had been too tight for years and now, finally, I could stretch. But of course, it didn't last long. One night, just after dinner, there was a knock on the cottage door. It was late, too late for deliveries, and Marcus wasn't due to stop by. I looked through the peephole. And I froze. Natalie. She stood there in a simple gray coat, no makeup, hair tied back. For a split second, I saw the little girl version of her, when she used to knock on the bathroom door to ask if she could borrow my earrings for school. But I didn't open the door. I opened the window beside it and spoke through the screen. "What are you doing here?" "Mom," she said, her voice small. "Can we talk?" "No," I said. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I needed to see you." I looked at her, really looked. And I saw it, she was unraveling. The sharpness in her eyes had dulled. Her hands were trembling. For a moment, I felt that old tug in my chest. But I didn't let it pull me in this time. "You're under investigation," I said calmly. "You've already broken trust orders and tried to access my accounts. You came here to manipulate me. Just like always." "No," she whispered. "That's not true. I messed up. I know that. But I didn't think it would go this far." "That's the difference between you and me," I replied. "I live with the consequences of my choices. You've spent your life pretending they were someone else's fault." She swallowed. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She never really cried. She just knew how to look like she might. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "But I needed you to see that I'm not a monster." I stared at her through the screen. I didn't speak for a long moment. "Maybe you're not," I said finally. "But you're not my daughter anymore either." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then, quietly, she turned and walked away. I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and called Marcus. He was livid. "We're filing for a protective order first thing tomorrow." And we did. But still, that night I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing her face, hearing her voice. Not the woman on the porch. The girl with braids and scraped knees who used to fall asleep beside me on the couch with a book on her chest. I missed that version of her. And I think deep down I always would. The next day, I returned to work at the foundation. We were hosting our first public event, a seminar on elder fraud prevention. I was scheduled to speak, along with 2 attorneys and a woman who'd lost her retirement savings to a distant relative posing as her caretaker. The turnout was small but powerful. I stood at the front of the room, heart steady, and told my story. Not in full. Not with every legal detail or private pain. Just the part that mattered. That it can happen to anyone, even when you love someone with your whole heart. Afterward, a man in his 70s came up to me. "I've got 3 sons," he said. "I've always wondered if the youngest would do what your daughter did if he thought he could get away with it." I looked him in the eyes. Now he knows he can't. By the end of the week, the court officially denied Natalie's attempt to contest the trust. Her claim was thrown out. Marcus called to tell me the judge's statement had been unusually pointed. This court finds the petitioner's claim not only lacking merit, but founded on deception. Natalie had lost. For real this time. No more schemes. No more forged forms or charm-filled interviews. Just consequences. A few days later, I received the final letter I would ever accept from her. It came through her attorney and signed. A plea deal had been offered. 12 years in federal prison in exchange for full cooperation, restitution, and testimony against 2 others involved in the scheme. If she didn't accept, they'd go to trial. The attorney wrote that she intended to take the deal. I closed the letter. I didn't read it twice. I walked to the backyard, dug a small hole beneath the maple tree that shaded the cottage, and buried the envelope. Not as some dramatic gesture. Just to be done with it. A few days later, Marcus and I met to finalize the foundation's expansion plan. I handed him a folder of notes I'd written. "I want to take this to D.C., I said. Congressional hearings. Public campaigns. Mandatory reviews for elder guardianships. We can't let this stay quiet." He smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." I looked out the window of the cafe where we were sitting. The street was alive with people going about their lives, unaware of the battles other people were quietly fighting. I used to feel invisible in crowds like that. Now I felt solid, grounded, alive. When I was a young girl, my mother once told me, "Your story is your own, Evelyn. Don't let anyone else write it for you." I didn't understand what she meant back then. I do now. After everything I've been through, the betrayal, the lies, the courtroom fights, and the nights I sat alone asking myself how I didn't see it coming, I finally understand. This life, this voice, this truth, it's mine. And no one, not even someone I gave birth to, gets to take that away from me. It's been nearly a year since I walked out of Golden Creek in that worn hoodie and dark sunglasses. A year since I reclaimed my name, my freedom, my right to make choices. And yet, some mornings I still wake up startled, expecting to hear the soft knock of a nurse calling me sweetheart as she enters without waiting. I still flinch sometimes when I see a silver SUV like Natalie's, or when the news runs stories about elder care and financial abuse. But the difference now is, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm aware, and I'm louder than I ever was before. Natalie accepted the plea deal. 12 years in federal prison. She didn't ask for a lighter sentence, didn't send another apology, didn't even try to explain. I suppose, in her own way, that was the only decent thing she did at the end. Not dragging me through another round of tears and lies. I don't know where she is now. I don't care to know. I've released her. And maybe that's the biggest form of power I've taken back. The ability to let go, not out of weakness, but because I don't owe her a single piece of myself anymore. The Silver Voice Project has grown into something I never imagined when I first wrote its name on that yellow legal pad. We have volunteers in 4 states. We've partnered with law schools to create internships for students wanting to specialize in elder protection. We've even helped pass 2 local bills that require financial institutions to report unusual transactions when an elderly person is under guardianship. It's not enough, not yet, but it's a start. And it's something I never would have done if Natalie hadn't tried to erase me. Funny, isn't it? The same woman who tried to make me disappear became the reason I became more visible than ever before. Leah and I still talk weekly. She left Golden Creek, not long after the new administration came in. She's working at a senior center now, running programs that teach older adults how to spot scams, manage digital banking, and protect themselves from their own families if necessary. She told me once, "Meeting you changed the way I see people, Evelyn. You reminded me that age doesn't mean helpless." Marcus, he's still my attorney, but more than that, he's become a friend. The kind of person who never needed to raise his voice to fight for someone. His name appears on nearly every document that comes through the foundation now. I sometimes joke that when I'm gone, he's getting everything I haven't already given away to charity. He just shakes his head and says, "I'd rather keep you around longer. One day, maybe soon, I'll leave this little cottage. It's been a place of healing, a quiet shelter in the storm. But I've started to feel like it's not quite where I belong anymore. I've been thinking about moving back to Albuquerque, not to live in the same neighborhood or haunt the same grocery stores, but to stand in front of the library I worked in for 40 years and know that I walked away with my dignity intact. Maybe I'll walk through those doors one more time, just to feel the rows of books again, the weight of stories that helped shape who I am." Not long ago, I sat down to record a video for the Silver Voice Project. Just a short clip, something for the website to welcome new visitors. I thought I'd be nervous, but when the camera turned on, I looked straight into the lens and spoke the words that had lived inside me since the day Natalie left me at that facility. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 67 years old. And this is not the end of my story. It's the beginning of a life I chose for myself. And that's the truth. I tell my story now not for sympathy, not for pity, but because silence is what abusers count on. They count on your shame, on your fear, on your love, even to keep you from speaking. But I'm done being quiet. Because every time I speak, someone else finds the courage to speak too. I met a woman recently at one of our workshops. Her name was Linda, 74. She'd been living with her niece who slowly drained her retirement over 5 years. Linda thought it was her fault, that maybe she'd been careless or forgetful. But after hearing my story, she went to the authorities, got her money back, and got her life back. That's what this is about. Not revenge, not bitterness, but reclaiming what was taken. Your voice, your value, your worth. Somewhere, I still have that little notebook I started in Golden Creek. The one where I took notes, wrote down bank account numbers, scribbled questions I was too scared to ask out loud. I've kept it not because I need it now, but because it reminds me of who I was before I stood up for myself. Not weak, just trapped. And still fighting, even then. I think I'll keep that notebook forever. The other day, someone from a national news outlet called. They want to do a feature, Women of Resilience, or something like that. I haven't said yes yet. Part of me feels like my work isn't over. That the best thing I can do isn't to stand in front of a camera, but to sit beside someone who's been silenced and hand them a pen. Because sometimes that's all it takes to begin rewriting your story. A pen. A choice. And the courage to say, this is mine. So if you've made it this far, and you're listening, thank you. Thank you for hearing my voice. Thank you for believing that someone like me, quiet, gray-haired, forgotten for a time, still matters. And if you ever find yourself where I was, lost in a place that doesn't feel like yours anymore, remember this. You are not a burden. You are not invisible. And you are not finished. Not even close.